So, we begin to wonder what happens when the universe whispers something we're not ready to hear. There are these profound moments in physics, these turning points, where a single observation shatters everything we thought was solid, where reality itself seems to tilt on its axis. And right now, we're standing at the edge of one of those moments. Picture this. July arrives, and with it, a faint speck of light appears against the cosmic backdrop. Nothing remarkable at first glance, just another silent traveler drifting through an ocean of darkness. But here's where it gets interesting. That seemingly insignificant pinpoint would evolve into something that challenges the very foundations of what we know. We call it 3I Atlas, marking it as the third visitor from beyond our solar neighborhood to cross our threshold. Yet, even that label, that simple designation feels almost naive now because what we're watching doesn't follow the script. It refuses to behave like the comets we've studied, the asteroids we've mapped, or any celestial wanderer in our extensive catalogs. Something about it feels fundamentally different. Let me paint you a picture that might make you pause. Imagine something tearing through space at 152,000 meters per hour. Think about that velocity for just a moment. We're talking about speeds that dwarf nearly everything else moving through our cosmic backyard by a factor of 5. Your typical space debris, those asteroids and meteoroids we monitor, they glide past at maybe 20,000 or 30,000 miles per hour. But this is operating on an entirely different scale. And here's what really captures the imagination. When researchers rewound its path, tracing back through space and time, they discovered something extraordinary. Atlas didn't originate from our asteroid belt. It didn't come from the distant Kuiper belt or even the mysterious Oort cloud. No, this traveler emerged from the absolute darkness between the stars themselves. A cosmic drifter that may have journeyed through the void for tens of thousands of years, maybe far longer before quietly slipping into our domain. Initially, the scientific community remained cautiously intrigued. After all, we'd seen this before, hadn't we? Back in 2017, we encountered 1I or Muamua. Then in 2019, 2I Borisov passed through. Unusual objects, certainly rare encounters, absolutely. But perhaps they thought Atlas was simply another fragment torn from some distant planetary system. So they observed, they measured, they calculated its trajectory with precision. And for months, Atlas remained enigmatic but silent, a phantom drifting through the machinery of our solar system. But then, in an instant that no one predicted, the story transformed completely. Radio telescopes scattered across our planet, listening devices pointed toward the heavens, suddenly erupted with energy. This wasn't mere interference or the usual hiss of the cosmos. What came through was deliberate, focused, a signal so distinct it rippled across monitoring stations on opposite sides of our world. Imagine that for a second. The universe silent for billions of years, suddenly finding its voice. Was this some strange atmospheric distortion? Perhaps an eruption from our own sun playing tricks on our instruments? Or could it be something far more profound? A transmission from an intelligence we've barely begun to comprehend. The honest answer is, we still don't know. But here's what haunts us. Atlas sent that signal once, piercing through the darkness with unmistakable clarity. And if it happened once, what's stopping it from happening again? That question, that lingering possibility, is exactly what keeps researchers staring at their monitors long after midnight. Now, if this were where the enigma ended, we'd already have enough material to fuel decades of investigation. But 3I Atlas refuses to play by any rulebook we've written. The anomalies stack up one after another, each more puzzling than the last. So, let's examine what makes this object so profoundly strange. Consider its luminosity first. When we study celestial bodies, we determine their dimensions by analyzing how they reflect our sun's light. Natural space rocks battered by eons of cosmic violence possess rough, irregular surfaces. They're pockmarked by ancient impacts scarred by radiation, their textures absorbing and scattering light in unpredictable patterns. These objects appear dull, inconsistent, but Atlas, it radiates brilliance. Its surface reflects light, with an intensity that reminds us more of manufactured alloys than primordial stone. When the Webb Space Telescope turned its gaze toward this visitor, the data revealed something remarkable. Photons bounce off Atlas with a uniformity that suggests incredible smoothness, an almost engineered consistency. These are descriptors we rarely, if ever, apply to the chaotic remnants nature leaves scattered through space. Then we encounter the rotation anomaly. Natural celestial objects don't spin with grace. They tumble through the void erratically, wobbling like a poorly thrown ball. Their rotation's irregular and unpredictable. Yet, Atlas rotates with mathematical precision, maintaining specific orientations toward our observation points, as if following some predetermined choreography. The luminosity remains remarkably stable. The timing shows no deviation. What we're witnessing appears less like a tumbling fragment of rock and more like a deliberately oriented mechanism, something that seems to know exactly which surfaces should face our direction. And then there's the thermal signature. When Webb's infrared sensor is locked onto 3I, Atlas researchers anticipated the standard thermal mosaic, those shifting patterns of warmth and cold as different surfaces rotate through sunlight and shadow. But that's not what they found. Instead, one side maintained a persistently elevated temperature compared to the other. So we have to ask ourselves, how is this possible? Either 3I Atlas is producing heat from within, a phenomena no natural comet in our experience has ever demonstrated, or it's equipped with some form of thermal regulation system. Think about that for a moment. Picture a vessel with radiators, technology capable of distributing and managing heat across its exterior. The implications make you stop and reconsider everything. Now, let's talk about what it's made of. The spectroscopic analysis absolutely astounded researchers. Where we'd normally detect abundant water vapor streaming from a comet, Atlas instead releases carbon dioxide at levels 10 times higher than expected. But the metallic signatures are where things get truly bizarre. Nickel pours from this object in extraordinary quantities, while iron, which should dominate, is virtually nowhere to be found. This completely inverts every pattern we've documented from cometary bodies throughout history, and it gets more unsettling. The carbon-based molecules we're detecting aren't primitive or random. They're intricate, organized, displaying complexity we typically associate with either living systems or deliberate fabrication, not the chaotic chemistry of deep space. Then we examine its internal architecture. Density measurements reveal something that defies natural formation. 3I Atlas isn't monolithic. Instead, it contains voids, empty spaces, what appears to be layered construction. Think about how celestial bodies normally form. Particles accumulate gradually. Dust binds into pebbles. Pebbles compress into boulders. Boulders fuse under gravity into mountains. And eventually, you get a dense, solid world. They're compact all the way through. Hollow interiors simply don't persist in nature's random assembly process. Yet, Atlas resonates with emptiness, as if its structure was intentionally engineered that way. But here's where the mystery deepens into something that genuinely challenges our understanding. 3I Atlas is altering its trajectory not through violent maneuvers or obvious propulsion, but through delicate, almost imperceptible adjustments, tiny bursts of acceleration, microscopic course modifications, gentle pushes that shift its path in ways that outgassing or solar radiation simply cannot account for. There's no visible exhaust trail, no plume of ejected material, no conventional explanation whatsoever. Yet, our most precise instruments confirm it beyond doubt. Its velocity changes, its heading adjusts ever so slightly. And here's what truly captures our attention: the timing of these trajectory changes. That's what makes scientists lean forward in their chairs. These corrections happen predominantly when our Earth-based observatories have optimal viewing conditions. Almost as if whatever is guiding this object understands our observation windows and wants to ensure visibility. Now, before you think this sounds too extraordinary, remember Muamua, that visitor also accelerated without any detectable cause. The conventional explanation suggested solar radiation pressure acting on an unusually flat, pancake-like shape, gently nudged by photons from our sundae. But that theory starts crumbling when the same behavior emerges again with 3I Atlas. And remarkably, these accelerations correlate with our monitoring capabilities. It begins to feel less like random chance and more like an emerging blueprint. This brings us to the historical context. And the timeline is absolutely striking. For generations, we detected nothing from beyond our solar system. Complete silence. Then, suddenly, in 2017, Oumuamua makes its entrance. That elongated anomaly, rotating chaotically, speeding up inexplicably, without any visible tail. Just 2 years later, in 2019, Boris arrives. It seemed more familiar, certainly displaying the tail and hazy coma we expect, yet still racing through our neighborhood at velocities that exceeded nearly every natural comet we'd previously recorded. And now here, in 2025, 3I Atlas arrives, carrying the most perplexing characteristics of both previous visitors. Extraordinary velocity that mirror-like reflectivity, chemical signatures that make no sense, unexplained trajectory changes, and entirely new mysteries that neither Oumuamua nor Boris ever presented. Think about this sequence. 3 interstellar objects in less than 10 years after our cosmos maintained absolute silence for billions of years. The statistical improbability is staggering, unless what we're witnessing isn't coincidence at all, unless there's something far more intentional happening here than random celestial wandering. So, let's dive deeper into what the Webb telescope uncovered, because this is where the mystery transforms into something that genuinely challenges our scientific foundations. The spectroscopic data web captured revealed surface chemistry that doesn't exist in our reference libraries. We're seeing organized carbon architectures, molecular arrangements that whisper of purposeful construction rather than cosmic accident. The surface itself displays geometric consistency, recognizable patterns, precise angles, mathematical symmetry. These aren't the characteristics of debris battered by eons of collisions. Temperature patterns across its body remain unnervingly stable, unnaturally controlled. Density fluctuations scream one undeniable fact. This object contains hollow spaces within, and perhaps most disturbing of all, there's measurable electromagnetic activity emanating from it. Not the random static of space, but structured signals, repeating patterns that make veteran astrophysicists genuinely uncomfortable. Under normal circumstances, a discovery of this magnitude would trigger an explosion of scientific activity. Academic papers would flood journals. Raw data sets would pour into public repositories. Thousands of researchers worldwide would dissect every pixel, every measurement, every anomaly. But something very different happened this time. The response was silence. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, an institution built on transparency and public engagement, abruptly locked down access. Observation schedules disappeared from public view. Data requests were either flatly denied or returned, so heavily redacted they became meaningless. The European Space Agency mirrored these actions almost immediately. International research partnerships, collaborations that had functioned smoothly for decades, suddenly fractured. Scientists found themselves reassigned without explanation, excluded from critical meetings, deliberately isolated from ongoing analysis. The information pipeline simply stopped flowing. Freedom of Information Act requests produced documents so censored they were essentially blank pages, punctuated with vague references to national security concerns. National security regarding a comet passing through space. Let that phrase settle in your mind for a moment. What does it tell you when those words get invoked? And the timing of this information blackout raises every possible red flag. It coincided exactly precisely with Webb's most troubling discoveries. Those initial observations showing unusual speed and brightness released publicly without hesitation. But the moment spectroscopic analysis began suggesting something artificial, something manufactured, the curtain dropped instantly. This confronts us with two equally staggering possibilities: Perhaps government agencies have uncovered something so fundamentally paradigm-shifting that they've decided our civilization isn't psychologically prepared for the revelation. Or alternatively, they're staring at data they cannot comprehend, phenomena that terrify them precisely because it defies explanation, and they're paralyzed by fear of releasing information they don't fully understand. Neither scenario offers much reassurance. Which brings us back to that initial transmission. That radio burst powerful enough to register on detection equipment spanning multiple continents simultaneously. If that signal was genuine, and we currently have no solid evidence to dismiss it as instrumental error, then what we're observing goes far beyond simple light reflection or passive gas sublimation. 3. I-Atlas possesses the capability to transmit. It can communicate, and that raises the question that keeps us awake at night. Who is the intended recipient? Is it reaching out to us? Perhaps signaling to another intelligence we haven't detected yet? Or could it be interfacing with systems so advanced they exist beyond anything our current understanding can even conceptualize? Now, let's shift perspective for a moment. Imagine you're part of an advanced civilization monitoring humanity's gradual awakening. For thousands of years, we remained essentially blind to the cosmos beyond our immediate neighborhood. Our technology was too primitive to detect visitors passing through the darkness between worlds. But then, in this remarkable 21st century, something changes. Our instruments become sophisticated enough to spot those faint pinpoints of light, capable of tracking their trajectories, analyzing their chemical fingerprints. What an ideal moment to initiate an evaluation. You send objects carefully calibrated to spark curiosity. MUA arrives first, compelling us to grapple with acceleration that defies conventional propulsion. Boresoft follows, delivering samples of chemistry unlike anything in our databases. Then, 3I-Atlas appears, presenting geometric patterns, internal hollowness, and possibly even direct communication. Notice the progression. Each visitor escalates the mystery. Each one pushes right up against the boundaries of our current comprehension. Not so overwhelming that it triggers panic, but challenging enough to stretch our thinking to prepare us for something larger. This is the hypothesis quietly circulating among certain researchers. These aren't random fragments of distant worlds. They're a reconnaissance mission, not the kind designed for dramatic landings or formal announcements, but subtle evaluators asking fundamental questions. Have you developed the awareness to notice what's in front of you? Can you set aside your preconceptions and examine evidence that contradicts your models? Are you intellectually prepared to question reality itself? It's an examination not of our telescopes or spectrometers, but of our capacity for wonder and adaptation. Now, I need to emphasize this remains in the realm of speculation. Natural explanations certainly exist. Perhaps we're encountering exotic chemistry we've never cataloged. Maybe there are dynamic processes in interstellar space our current models haven't accounted for, but the pattern emerging across these 3 visitors is impossible to ignore. And that governmental secrecy shrouding 3I-Atlas strongly suggests that in classified briefing rooms, decision-makers are confronting these exact same unsettling questions. So this is where we find ourselves standing at the edge of 2 dramatically different futures. In one scenario, 3I-Atlas turns out to be the most extraordinarily unusual natural comet ever documented. It would force us to completely rewrite our understanding of interstellar objects, expand our models of cosmic chemistry and dynamics. That outcome alone would represent a revolution in planetary science. But there's another possibility, one that fundamentally alters everything. If even a small percentage of these anomalies withstand scrutiny, if those trajectory corrections are genuinely deliberate, if that hollow structure is confirmed, if that radio transmission was authentically intentional, then we're potentially witnessing the first confirmed contact with intelligence originating beyond our planet. Think about the profound implications of that possibility. For the entire span of human existence, we've operated under the assumption that the cosmos is simply an immense theater where we perform our brief existence in isolation, that we're solitary consciousness wandering through an indifferent void. But what if that fundamental assumption is wrong? What if we're not alone in this vast darkness? And here's the part that truly shifts your perspective. What if we're not the ones doing the observing? What if all along we've been the subjects of observation? Every telescope we've aimed toward distant galaxies, every spacecraft we've launched beyond our atmosphere, every radio message we've broadcast into the silence, perhaps none of it disappeared into nothingness. Perhaps it's all been received, carefully studied, methodically cataloged. 3. I-Atlas functions as a cosmic mirror, reflecting back an image of ourselves as a species potentially under examination. And yes, that realization carries a weight of unease, even fear, but it also ignites something extraordinary within us. Science has never been about seeking comfort or maintaining convenient illusions. Science demands that we face the unknown with intellectual courage, that we pursue truth, regardless of how unsettling it might be. As 3IA Atlas continues its journey deeper into our solar system's interior, our responsibility becomes crystal clear. We must maintain vigilant observation. We must demand complete transparency from institutions currently restricting access to critical data. Every anomaly deserves rigorous testing. Every measurement requires independent replication. Every assumption we've built our understanding upon must be challenged without mercy. Because somewhere out there, drifting through that incomprehensible emptiness between stellar systems, an answer exists. And the nature of that answer may prove far more extraordinary, far more reality-altering than our current imagination allows us to conceive. So, hold on to this moment in your memory. Remember this designation, 3I Atlas, an object that violates every expectation we had about what should cross our cosmic threshold. Perhaps it's a messenger carrying information we're only beginning to decode. Perhaps it's a warning about something we haven't yet recognized. Or perhaps it's simply an elaborate puzzle left for us to solve, testing whether we possess the intellectual flexibility required for what comes next. Whatever its true nature ultimately reveals itself to be, it has already accomplished something profound. It has forced our collective consciousness to expand beyond the comfortable boundaries of conventional scientific thinking. And that represents the genuine treasure of discoveries like this. They serve as powerful reminders that the universe refuses to be reduced to a solved equation, neatly cataloged and filed away. It remains vibrantly alive, constantly evolving, endlessly mysterious. And yes, it is communicating with us, if only we possess the wisdom and courage to listen.